All right, we're going to do an update on South America and Latin America, specifically what's going on in Bolivia. Evo Morales has apparently fled the country, granted asylum in Mexico by the foreign minister Marcelo Ebrard of Mexico, and he's actually draped in a Mexican flag here, which, you know, I think it's difficult for me to blame him necessarily. I mean, granted, I wouldn't say that it's guaranteed that he would be murdered in Bolivia, but when you're overthrown, why would you take the chance? And I know people will probably criticize him and say, hey, he's flown the coop, and what kind of coward leaves the country when he's being accused of rigging the election, etc., which I'm not going to wade into. I think that it'd be better actually to see the results, if at all. Sometimes I wonder how much of what is going on is really able to be made accountable, right? So he's being accused of rigging his election for a fourth term as president of Bolivia, and there was a 3-week strike and revolution of Bolivians. The left is calling it a CIA coup. So on the one hand, you have them saying, well, of course it's the CIA. Why else would this popular leader who is indigenous and blah blah blah, and he's reduced the racial wealth gap or whatever, the economic inequality, all this crap that nobody really cares about when you talk to people on a day-to-day basis. I've never actually heard a poor person, by the way, ever talk about the racial or gender pay gap or the wealth or the economic inequality. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about, oh, why can't I make more at my job, or why is it that this CEO is making more than me? They never really go into the economic inequality, which is, if you think about it, this device that people on the left use in order to say we need to level society because some person is doing astonishingly successful, right? Even people I don't like, people for example, like let's say Elon Musk. I'm not crazy about him. I wouldn't say I hate him. Elon Musk makes a ton of money. As long as he makes money in ways that I'm fine with, I don't care if he makes much more than you or I. I really couldn't care less. And people who are what I would say part of the jealousy crowd, and it's not only people on the left, by the way, I think that they get away with this notion that there has to be an amount of money that everybody should have as a cap. There should be a wealth cap, and that everyone should be brought down to the same level. They don't understand. Achievement is determined by motivation. If people are given a cap for how far they can get motivated to, if what they desire is wealth, they're going to try to achieve less. And that's not really the way that society and humanity advance, right? So yeah, I reject that. By the way, a lot of people are making this huge ruckus about, well, America first. We have to fight corporations. Corporations don't care about people. Most people who are, they've ever worked a day in their life know that the corporation isn't about caring about the people. You sign up to work somewhere. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes, in fact, it works out pretty poorly. And sometimes you're able to go pretty far. And that's the way it is. That's what you call the game of the workplace, right? It's not guaranteed that every day you're going to have a good day at work. That's why they call it work. So I am off on a tangent, but yeah, he's gone. And look, I think it's the best outcome possible at the moment for Evo Morales and B, the people of Bolivia. I think some people would say, well, they should string him up on a pole and play tetherball with him. But no, I don't believe in things like that. First of all, I do think that there could be still a civil war. I think him leaving the country reduces somewhat the risk of a civil war in Bolivia, and I think that's for the best. I'm always trying to see what's the best way to avoid the most violent solution, which is war. You want solutions that will work for the most people. And Evo Morales leaving the country for the majority of Bolivians, I think, is okay. Obviously, a lot of people are not going to be happy. I might do some research on some other aspects of this that are not directly connected to him. I don't think this is entirely just an issue of Evo Morales and the Movement for Socialism, which is his party. I think that there's other forces at play. And we don't even know if the new government is going to be effective. But the real issue that I'm seeing is that people are missing a little bit of a connection. I'm sure some people are pointing it out, but we're still in the early hours, which is that Bolivia is a coca state. They grow a massive amount of the coca plant. The coca leaf is produced in countries like Bolivia and Peru and Ecuador. I think some of it is produced in Colombia, but Colombia is by no means the main center of cultivation. And I personally am not I'm not really a prohibitionist. I think that cocaine, putting people in prison for cocaine possession is a difficult pill to swallow, if you pardon the analogy. And yet, I've talked to a friend of mine who's a pharmacist, and we've talked a lot about the opioids crisis and why opioid prescriptions are so out of whack and how it became so unregulated and overprescribed and things like that. And I talked to him about recreational drugs, and he said that as someone who is obviously very close to the topic, both from before he was a pharmacist and since he's become one, he doesn't necessarily believe that you should legalize these substances simply because as a public health interest, it's not really good that people go around literally snowed over all the time, ready to party all day, right? And then therefore it reduces in many cases it wears out your heart health, right? Because it raises your heartbeat above the natural rhythm. It does things like play with your blood vessels, play with a lot of your nerve endings, and some of the nervous chemicals in your system. I'm not getting the terminology exactly right, but that's the broad strokes of it. Having cocaine be legal is a big topic, and I'm a little bit of a fence sitter on it because I don't think people that I've known who went to jail for cocaine, but either for dealing cocaine or for cocaine habits and involvement in certain aspects of it, I don't think necessarily that putting them in prison was the best way to go about it. And I know a lot of people who have told me, I know people, everybody that I used to hang out with knows someone who's been in jail for drug offenses. Okay, and I've known people who went to jail for drug offenses. I've known people who died of drug overdoses, especially people who were, school grade friends of mine. And I think it's really a problem in this country that there is no focus on treatment. It's all about the judicial issue. But Bolivia decided that they would, I believe, liberalize the cultivation of coca, meaning that they wouldn't work to eradicate it. And I'm not sure what to say about it. It's like, if I was to say, they're trying to, under Morales, of course, Morales is gone now. If I was to say, Morales is just this narco dictator or whatever, I mean, I don't really like, as much as I criticize his economic policies, I don't care if someone says, I give you all the permission you want to grow as much coca as you want, or as much weed as you want or anything like that. It's really, in my opinion, it's an issue of his own sovereignty. And if the rest of the world is saying to him, "Hey, you can't grow coca," that would be unethical because your people trying to make a little money off of some booger sugar. That's just wrong. It's wrong for the rest of the world. It is really something that I kind of debate sometimes. What's the right way to go in terms of drug liberalization? What would it be called? Drug legalization, the end of prohibition, things like that. It's a tough topic, and it's tough also because I don't think people should be using these substances if they're trying to live a longer and healthier life. They do tend to bring it to a shorter end, or closer end, whatever you want to say. The truth is, though, that it is funny that the country that did extend to Morales asylum is a country that's basically a narco state now, Mexico. Mexico, I believe they released. This is something I didn't really cover so much. I'm not as frequently posting as I used to, and even then I wasn't really focusing on Mexico. But Mexico freed El Chapo's son Ovidio Guzman during a violent clash in Culiacan on Thursday. So Mexico basically turned tail and let him go. And after arresting, interrogating, and beating him, saying that there was not enough evidence to hold him. So in the space of 5 hours, I guess Mexico decided that they would beat this drug lord's son, interrogate him, arrest him, not in the same order, and release him. I mean, that's really the type of countries we're talking about. So when we talk, when people think about this in terms of ideology, ideology is really a bunch of crap, right? These people who call themselves socialists, who believe in this fake notion that they're building a better society in either Mexico or Bolivia or Venezuela or Nicaragua or Brazil, they never did come through with that. Brazil, this country that people are celebrating now, especially the Glenn Greenwalds of I think I just, I might have just insulted the Chinese there with my L's and R's, but Glenn Greenwald and his ilk are celebrating the release of Lula in Brazil. This country that they claimed was going to fall under the sway of fascism has released their convicted, corrupt corrupt former president, the guy who basically looted the country, and he was put in prison for it. So he's been released pending the exhaustion of his appeals, and yet they seem to think that he made Brazil a better country. Well, no, he didn't. I've done videos, and this is a long time going back. You can go look where I showed, and this was in 2014. It was either 2014 or 2016, whenever it was before the Brazilian World Cup, that Brazil was basically bulldozing people's neighborhoods in order to build World Cup infrastructure and stadiums. So people are trying to associate all the time that these colors, the red and the yellow, the colors of socialism and communism and all that, they're trying to associate that with fighting for the underdog, fighting for the less privileged in society. The people that were bulldozed during the World Cup, they were... I'll show you. Let me see if I can find it. So this was in Brazil. Yeah, this was 2014. So there were just riots all the time there. It was a mess. And
tomorrow at the
when I say riots, it kind of it makes Ferguson look tame.
Well, millions of soccer fans are ready, but construction crews are still working this morning, and critics wonder if the host can manage one of the world's biggest sporting events. Elaine Quijano is in Sao Paulo, Brazil, outside the stadium where the opening game will be played. Elaine, good morning.
Good morning. Brazil has had 7 years to prepare for the World Cup, a chance for this country to prepare airports, roads, and
as a cultural event. But the FIFA event is something.
And in the end, we're not even able to watch the game.
New stadium.
So many people are losing their houses, losing their life, and in the end, we're not even.
Now, I know some people will say, "Oh, this is just the CIA plant." Does the CIA hire a dude with these teeth? I mean, look at that. I think you know the answer to that question.
Able to watch the game. So I think the message is, this is not for you.
On Tuesday night, Brazil's president.
So yeah, I know that it's a little bit of a abridged version of the whole story, but yeah, they were building these massive stadiums that were tens of millions of dollars to some in some cases I think hundreds of millions of dollars for the World Cup that never ended up being used. Now this is in Brazil, a country where the game of football, of soccer, is basically a religion, and there's no use for them because most of the clubs in Brazil don't have a huge capacity of fans. So all they have are tens of thousands of fans. They don't need an 80,000 seat venue. And it's really a tragedy that we have people who try to say, well, we should make societies conform to an ideology. I don't really think societies conform to an ideology. I think sometimes cultures expand beyond that. I think, of course, there's expressions of those ideologies within culture. There's communal cultures that are, people who live in villages, things like that. And then there's more individualistic cultures and everything. But you can't just attribute this fake fanatical loyalty to Evo Morales to a desire to make Bolivia a more successful country. Bolivia being it's a neighbor of Brazil and everything. Evo Morales, I think history will judge that he did try to make Bolivia a more equal society. I think that holding on to power too long for any leader is the wrong thing to do. That I say the same thing about Netanyahu, by the way. I say the same thing about Merkel. People who try to stay in power too long, I think, end up corrupting themselves, corrupting the people around them, corrupting the society that they lead. And that's really what I think happened in Bolivia. And that's what happens in every socialist dictatorship, by the way. That's why I think you need division of powers, and you need a country where there's checks and balances, and you have a system of law rather than a system of belief. A belief in an ideology and in some sort of core system that everyone has to go along with the program. Yeah, that's my take. That's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com, as well as Subscribestar. All those are at Chef Leopard. And I'm banned on Twitter, so no Chef Leopard on Twitter. But Starscream85 on Gab. And I'll talk to you later.